Welcome, everybody, to another rendition of The Lone Wolf Show. I'm The Lone Wolf, and you are watching www.witchcrafttv.online. And this is the special series of WitchCon, a series where we interview the WitchCon presenters for February 20th to the 23rd in witchcon.com. And we have a special guest that's going to be presenting. But until we do, we give you the intro. Angel Morrigan, I heard that you were presenting at WitchCon for 2026. Is that true?
I am, and this will be my first WitchCon online conference, and I am so excited. I am so excited. I can't even tell you. I'm so excited to be here too with you. So thank you for this opportunity.
So tell me where you're located. Where are you at in the world of witchcraft geographically?
Geographically, I live in Toronto, Ontario, and it is one of the hubs of magic. And I like to also escape to Brockville, Ontario, where I'm on the St. Lawrence River. So I kind of split my time, and it is the home of the witches. So it's a really interesting thing. It's only something I've discovered recently, that in Vancouver, it is the place of the healers. Toronto is really the place of the psychics and the seers, and Brockville is, or the Ottawa area, where our capital is very much witch-based, and I love it. I love it. So I'm very much in two different places, because that's two parts of who I am. And I'm Gemini, right? So I'm always in two different places.
So tell me about WitchCon, and how did you get involved, and how did you come across this magnificent platform that it's like the largest conglomeracy of witches online in the world? Like, how did you get involved in this?
It's really funny, because I go to Conjure Camp every year, and if you know anything about WitchCon or Spectral Evidence or New Orleans itself, everybody knows Witch Doctor Utu. And so when I went to Conjure Camp, he had mentioned it before, and then a friend of mine who I had met there actually messaged me and said, "Hey, have you thought of ever applying for this?" And at the same time, Utu messaged me and said, "Hey, listen, apply for this." And I did. And so between the two of them, I was able to get involved, and I think Vutu also vouched for me, which is really awesome. And he's wonderful. I've nothing but amazing things to say about him. And that's how I really got involved. And then I did Spectral Evidence as well, just earlier last year. And I made a lot of new friends. I met Christian Day, and I saw Lori Cabot's workshop, and I got to hang out with the Dragon Ritual drummers and Utu and all that kind. And so it's been an incredible journey in making new friends and experiencing new ways of sharing my love and my passions.
So I read in your bio that you have some experience with radio shows in Canada, and said that 7 years. Tell me about your experience with radio in Canada.
So the first time I worked in radio, I've been really fortunate. I just kind of fall into stuff. I worked with News Talk 1010, which is our national station. And Barb DiGiulio had a show called The Night Side, and she wanted a reader. She just started a show on the air. And I was chosen to come and do a one-off with her. And we got along so well that she's like, okay, what if we did a monthly thing together? And a month-to-month thing turned into 7 years of just fun. And we were doing, and I got to do live readings on the air all over Canada. And at the same time, I also had my own television show with Rogers TV. And I also had I was hosting my own radio show too in a smaller town in Stouffville, where I was able to do live readings. So live readings on air and on stage, that's my forte. I do have my private clientele as well. I have an office in Toronto, and I work virtually, globally. But I love being on stage and on radio and on television and working with the masses, whether it's with animals, which is again my passion, or with humans and helping them and moving people forward and moving animals forward and empowering and just connecting and communicating and being that bridge.
So Canada's a national radio station you were on?
Yeah, so News Talk 1010 is our national news station here, and it's part of Bell Media, and so they pretty much air across Canada. So you could hear Angel the Psychic every Friday night, once a month, with Barb DiGiulio on the night side. And it was great fun. Like, we had a really, really good time. Barb and I had this amazing dynamic that we still do. We're still really, really good friends. In fact, she's actually hosted a couple of my shows on my onstage shows. So she and I have stayed very, very close.
So preliminary, before you were on national radio in Canada, how did you get involved in that? Like, what was the trajectory of that?
Okay, so I am a classically trained actor, and so I spent most of my life in theater. I ran my own theater companies. I was always on stage with doing Shakespeare and his contemporaries and all that kind of stuff. And I retired after 20 years of being in the industry because I was tired and it was changing. And then all of a sudden, this came. And when the psychic work came, I was basically a bored housewife, and I found this little store in Newmarket, Ontario, and there was a reader there. And I asked her, I said, what is it that I'm going to do with my life? In fact, at that point, I was throwing my hat in one more time, and I was in the last cuts of Stratford Festival, which is one of our bigger festivals here. And she said, well, this, and I thought, ugh, God, that's $45 I've just wasted. And just shortly after that, I ended up going to Guatemala, and a medicine man said to me that I was going to talk to animals and make a huge impact in the world. And I thought, oh, wow, this guy's on crack. So I was a non-believer. And so when I experienced these things, it was always, where's the limitation? When I came home from that, all of a sudden I was invited to go to this facility opening, which was a healer's facility. And they had these binders, and everybody was like writing their names, and they were being really polite. So I thought, okay, I'll write my name, whatever. And a week later, I got an email and said, don't forget you have an animal communications course. And I'm like, what? So I was telling a friend of mine, and she goes, you're going, right? And I said, no, I'm not. Of course I'm not. There's got to be a limit somewhere, right? This is ridiculous. And she goes, no, you're going. And she dragged me. So my intention on that weekend was to disprove that animal communications was real. And by the end of the weekend, the teacher, who became, again, a very dear friend of mine, convinced me without a doubt that this was real. So within 6 weeks of that, I went back to that little store where I originally had that first reading, and they were looking for readers. And they said, yeah, you know what? We're going to hire you, because I was able to prove myself. And then I stayed there for 9.5 years, and I trained and I trained and I shadowed and I worked and I communicated. And here I am, right now. And then within that 9.5 years, I was able to acquire the first show that I did live on stage. A friend of mine came to me, and she said, listen, we're doing a Halloween show. Come and be on stage. I'm like, I've never done that before. And she goes, just try it. And I said, all right, you know what do I have to lose? And when I hit the stage, I remember thinking, oh my God, this is combining the two things I love. I get it now. I get what I'm supposed to be doing. And I guess because I was so in alignment at that point that this is like, I get it now. It opened a door. And within weeks of that, I was scouted by the producers of Raising Energy, of Rogers TV, and Raising Energy came about. And in the same time, I had an agent. She was an okay agent, and she got me News Talk 1010. So it just, when you're in alignment, it really just doors begin to open magically. And that's how I got here. And then just one thing after another, after another, after another.
So it really seems like animal communication is your magic. I really would like to hear about the first time that you had an interaction with one of our brothers or sisters that are animals. What was the first interaction like? Where was it? And
funny enough, I had two that really convinced me this was real, because even after I had the job, even after I'd gone through the courses and whatever, there was always that part of me that doubted. And I had a cat who would he would pee in the heat register, and it really upset someone in my household. And they had this thing. It was always this thing. And I thought, okay, let's see if this animal communications thing works. And I kept sending my orange cat visuals of what I wanted him to do, which was to go to the washroom on the toilet. I wanted him to do that. Every day I would send him this. And it wasn't happening. And after 2 weeks, I kind of gave up, and I went, okay, obviously this stuff doesn't work, right? Like, look, nothing's happening. And I remember my son, who was very young at the time, he came in the bedroom and he woke me up and he goes, mommy, mommy, mommy. So what? And he's like, the cat's peeing in the toilet. I'm like, okay, wait, what? And I remember us jumping up, going to the bathroom and kind of looking around the door. And I kid you not, I couldn't make this up if I tried. This cat had its back to us, turned around, and I heard clear as day, it's what you wanted, wasn't it? And I nearly fell down, and I went, oh my God. Like, it was just incredible to watch that magic. Like, it literally felt like I was in a Harry Potter film. And then just after that, it couldn't have been more than a few months after that, we were at a very famous place here in Canada, and I don't want to name names, but the way they had their whale enclosure, it was a whale show. And the way the whales were treated were not, wonderfully humane. And so anyway, we were watching this show, and we were downstairs where they had this glass pane, and upstairs was full. So we came downstairs, we could hear everything. And all of a sudden we heard one of the trainers go, hey, this whale is, where's she going? Where are you going? And da da. And the whale came down, and I kid you not, it stopped at my son. And everything everyone kind of backed off a little bit. And then it kind of moved, and it came to me. And in that moment, I remember the overwhelming feeling of everything, like the loneliness, and there was pain, but there was joy, and there was all this. It was magnificent, in its power, and it dropped me to my knees. And after that encounter, it literally just kind of turned around and went back. And my son came over, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he said to me, and he goes, it's okay, mommy. He goes, I felt that too. And I went, wow. And then we left, because I was overwhelmed after that. So those are one of the first two that I ever encountered. And after that, the magic it's just continued. And I've had experience after experience after experience, and the things I've encountered and the things I've learned, the animals I've helped, the families that have come to me that I've been able to be a part of and nurture has been not only profound, but I feel privileged. Not to mention the fact that it's cool. Like, it's just freaking cool.
It certainly is. Many wise ones of humanity have a natural ability to correspond or communicate with different elements of nature, including animals. Yeah. And it seems like you have really adapted an adeptness to this skill. And in your bio, it says that you had learned from many teachers over the world about this particular skill. Who is your mentor, or who resonates with you the
Oh,
most? That you, is it like a fan club thing, or did you work with them exclusively? I would love to hear about it.
for me, it's been over the course of years, I've been lucky enough to fall in with the right people. And so, to give you an example, again, I was a bored housewife, and this was just after I started animal communicating. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, listen, these medicine men are here from Peru. Would you like to come? And they're doing this workshop." I said, "Yeah, sure. You know what? I have nothing to do tonight." So I went with them, and there were a group of about 30 people. And out of those 30 people, they pinned me and they said, "We need to work with you." And I was just like, "Why?" And they said, "There's something about you," right? And it's almost like it's like you'll know in time. And they taught me how to work with animals when they were doing cleansings, clearings, removals, ceremony, that kind of stuff. And they were only there for a short period of time. So I've been able to kind of get little things from the people that I encounter. So I've never worked like exclusively with one set of people. Different cultures seem to just call me in. I had an elder, an indigenous elder. I absolutely adored him. And he taught me how to use animal stones. So I also read through animal stones, which is something I haven't done in a while, but I have a bag of animal stones and each of them will tell a story. So if someone has a question for me, I ask them to pick a stone, or I pick a stone, which is what we call badger medicine, because the badger people are the storytellers. And I pick a stone, and that animal will have the medicine that they require, right? And if you look at if you look at the shelves behind me, you'll see that I have, crocodile medicine here and ostrich medicine here, and I even have deer medicine. And this was actually gifted to me by a dog, to be honest with you. This piece was gifted to me by our then border collie. She came out of the forest, and actually he came out of the forest, and we thought he had a bone in his mouth, which he did, and he dropped it right in front of me. And I thought, what is, and I picked it up and I thought, oh my God. And I had just started doing ceremonial work. So the deer represents many things for me. And it represents gentleness and the need for us to be gentle with ourselves. So when we have people who are in crisis, like a woman who's been in a violent situation or what have you, it's about being kind to ourselves and finding the kindness. And for me, it's very special too, because I was born in June, and June, as we know in the indigenous world, is the deer. So it's actually one of my medicines as well. And if you were to go downstairs in my dining room, you would see in the middle of my dining room right now with a Santa Claus hat on is Ella, and she is a giraffe skull. So we have a giraffe skull in the center of my dining room, and that always reminds me to reach for the stars, right? It reminds me that I'm not fragile. You may look that way, you might feel that way sometimes, but your strength is something that's always there.
So if someone comes to you as like a student or somebody that's seeking, that they like the idea of communication with people that aren't human, and they like the whole idea, and they come to advice, how do I get in touch with animals? How do I speak to them? How do I interact? What is the first type of teaching that you teach them?
Well, the first thing that I teach, whether it's human or animal, because for me it is transferable. When people come to me, I first tell them that you can do it, because a lot of people say, well, I can't do what you do, but I would like to. I would love to be able to learn how to talk. And I'll say to them, you can. It's an innate part of who we are. It's a natural part of who we are. It's not about learning how to communicate with animals. It's about remembering that we can, and it's about having confidence in that ability. Right. So every time we have an interaction with an animal, being confident that that interaction actually happened. So from a psychic perspective, when I have a student, the very first thing I teach them is to listen, dismiss nothing, and act on what you're getting. right? Because that's the way I was taught. I was given a picture of an animal, and she said, look at the picture, and whatever you get, you write it down. And don't judge it. Don't judge it. Dismiss nothing. Right? Listen to that little niggly. And that's what I did. And I find that it's not, I always joke, it's not rocket science, or else I wouldn't be doing it. It really isn't. It's about being simple. It's about being confident in ourselves and having faith and knowing, not believing. Belief leaves room for doubt, but knowing that this world exists and that we're a part of it, that we can communicate on more than just the verbal or physical level. There are 4 levels of communication: mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual, right? And when we tap into those levels and understand those levels, we can communicate with anything: animal, human, tree, plant. It doesn't matter. Energy is energy.
When it comes to divinity and higher power, do you resonate with a god and goddess? And if so, what patron deities do you work with?
I do. Funny enough, when I was a little girl, the goddess Diana of the forest, used to come to me all the time. I just didn't recognize it as such, right? I just thought she was a really cool figure, and Wonder Woman was the goddess Diana, so she came to me in different ways. And so Diana of the forest has always been there, but the one I loved the most, oddly enough, and he's up here, is Saint Francis of Assisi, and again, the patron saint of animals. When I went to my mom and I told her that I was working as a psychic, I was almost disowned, because we came from a very religious family. And I remember going to her and calling her and saying to her, I have something else to tell you. And she goes, oh God, what now? And I said to her, I said, I can talk to animals. And there was a silence on the phone. And all of a sudden she turned around and she said, now that I believe. And I'm like, what? I almost dropped off my chair. And she said to me that when I was a little girl, she goes, that's always, it was like I was talking to the animals, and I always had animals in my pockets, and the animals were always around me. These aren't things that I consciously remember, but she did. And I thought to myself that if someone who doesn't believe in anything can believe in that, this must be my calling. Like, this must be my path. And that was really encouraging for me. So Diana of the forest has always been there to protect me, to show me, to guide me. And I've also worked with Maman Brigitte. She's always been very, very special to me. And I've also worked with Hecate. And Hecate is my mother goddess. Before I even started on this path, I always had an affection towards her as a character. And I remember one day I had bought this deck of cards, and it was the very first deck of cards, and it had a raven in it, and I had shuffled, and the raven came out, and all I kept hearing was, look for the raven, look for the crow, look for the raven, look for the crow. And the store that I went to, that one I was telling you about earlier, where she said, you're going to be doing this for the rest of your life, and I thought she was on crack, the patron deity of that store was Hecate. And when I walked in, there was a crow sitting on the shelf. And years later, when I got to know them, they became my family. I was gifted with that same crow.
And is the crow a spirit animal that you work with a lot in the astral worlds, or?
Well, it's really funny because not so much the crow as the raven. I love the raven, but my spirit animal, the animal I work with mostly, is the snake. The raven was there to guide me in that phase of life. So I believe that there are 4 animals in our totem pole. So you have your spirit animal, you have your power animal, you have your guide, and then at the bottom, you have an animal energy that works with you in different phases of your life. When they come to work with you, once they're done, they're there as a tool. You have a clear channel with them. So at that point in my life, that was the animal energy that was working with me, which was the raven. It's since changed. But my spirit animal is actually the snake. Oddly enough, the one I resisted the most as a child. I was terrified of snakes. Thank you very much, Indiana Jones. And I was terrified of snakes. And when I started on the path, they started coming to me in different ways. And then when I started working with South Americans, they said, you're the snake. And I'm like, you know what, that makes sense. And eventually, through magical circumstances, and again, my son was a part of that. My son's a big part of my journey. We ended up with our first real snake, Severus, and he worked with me in ceremony for 17 years before he passed. And he taught me how to heal. He taught me that I'm here to help people shed the old skins to step into the new skins. Right? He taught me how to work both of the worlds. He taught me what I had to offer the world. So the snake is the biggest one that I think I've worked with over time in my life.
So you're going to be on WitchCon in February 20th to 23rd, one of those time brackets for the largest online presentation of witches in the world. Yes. Do you have any other festivals or presentations or gatherings that you're going to be attending in the United States or Canada abroad?
Depends. Actually, this is the first. Thank you for asking. This is the first year where I'm coming into 2026. I'm coming into a year where I have a whole lineup of things that I'm doing, and you can see them all on my website at racingenergy.com. But before I even say that, I want to say that at WitchCon, I'm going to be talking about a lot of stuff we've been talking about, but I am also going to be focusing a little bit on the paranormal world and how animals work in the paranormal world and on paranormal investigations, because I'm also a paranormal investigator, and I work with animals and utilize animals to help me in those particular cases. So I'm going to be talking a lot about that kind of thing too. But for the rest of the year, I'm hoping to be part of Spectral Evidence. I will be in New Orleans with the New Orleans Paracon. And guys, if you don't have your tickets yet, go get them, because this is going to be so rocking. And if you don't have your tickets for WitchCon yet, go get your tickets for WitchCon as well. I'm also now have a new home in Toronto called the Catacombs Cabaret, in which every month I get to do different shows. I get to explore, I get to expand, and that'll be my warm up for my tour, which usually happens in the fall. We haven't chosen our venues yet for that, but we do have that coming up. So we have a lot of stuff going on in the States here. We'll be doing investigations in the States as well, midsummer. So again, it's all there on my website.
So who's the coolest or the coolest place or conglomeracy that you did a paranormal investigation with? Like, tell me about that. What was the most surreal experience?
Okay, the most surreal paranormal experience I ever had, I think,
like chills in the spine, like
yeah,
whoa.
That was probably. I had two. One of them was the very first paranormal investigation I ever went on, because again, in my head, is like, there has to be limitations somewhere. And I was asked to come as kind of a minor celebrity thing. And when I went, I watched this spirit come down the stairs. And the gentleman who was the captain of the team at the time, he said, come here a second. And I did. And I was looking at the SLS camera, and the spirit that I saw coming down the stairs was registering on the camera. And my whole body just froze. I was literally in paralysis. I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, this piece of equipment has nothing to invest in what I'm doing or seeing, and it's correlating. Like, it was an incredible experience. So that was my very first thing that kind of made me go, holy crap, like this can validate for me, right? So that was bone chilling. But I think the most interesting one, or scariest one, that I ever went to, not even scary, but it was definitely unique. The same team, one of the investigators and I was very close, and all week we had been dreaming the same thing. And when we got there, we entered the home. We called it the Hangman's Case. We entered the home, and there were pictures that this woman had painted of this little creature, this black thing. And she and I looked at each other going, are you serious? And it turned out that this was an attachment that she had, that she had been carrying since she was 16. She'd made friends with it, she'd worked with it, but that wasn't why we were there. It was there because her husband had committed suicide. He'd hung himself in the garage, and she was afraid that he was still there. Well, it turned out that the man who hung himself in that garage was actually somebody I knew. And I didn't realize that. He was someone who had worked with my ex-husband years ago. So I walked in and I literally saw him, and I'm like, wait, what was this guy's name? And when she told me his name, I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? But what was really interesting about it was the sounds we were getting from the spirit box, the things that we were experiencing. I'd never experienced so many things. And so, like, at points I was afraid and I had to ground myself, and things were happening. And it was just a really rich, full investigation. And at the end of it, were able to get her and him to talk, because they were in the process of separating when he did this. And there was this beautiful healing that had taken place, right? So it was just the most bizarre, the bizarre cocktail of different vibrations in this particular investigation. So that's one of my favorite. But then again, in the States, I've been to Hinsdale. I've been to Wildwood Sanitarium, one of my favorite places to go, and I've experienced different things with different events as well. In Canada, we have the James White Seance, and I've experienced things during that seance too, which just were hair raising.
Thank you so much for sharing your craft with me and also our viewers. When it comes to the craft and its many different variations in contemporary witchcraft, we have different crafts that practitioners indulge in. When it comes to animistic craft, what would be your advice to young seekers, or ones that are young that have the animals in their hearts, and they have this passion where they think, or they may already be communicating and working with the animals within spirits, within physical and different forms? What is your advice to them?
Don't be afraid to work with the animal energies. And when they come to you, it may feel, overwhelming. But when they do come, they're there to help you, to work with you, and don't turn them away. Because I know a lot of people will go, you know what? This is bear medicine, and I don't need to work with bear medicine right now. Or they pick and they choose. It's like, no, if a deity is going to come and work with you, allow it in. And don't be afraid on calling on them. Right? Because I know a lot of young practitioners will say, well, I shouldn't, because, that's disrespectful, or, an angel per se, I'm not worthy, or I shouldn't, or I should. There's no such thing. The only limitations I have learned, the only limitations we have are the ones we place on ourselves, and when you're gifted with something like a bone or a skull or something like that, that's a precious gift. So when you have that and you're working with that skull, remember that you're working with a spirit. There is a spirit within that skull, and that is to be revered. They're there because they chose you. Okay? So be respectful, but also have fun with it. And that's a big thing for me, being a Gemini. Always have fun with it. Enjoy the process, especially with animals. I mean, that's just an incredible thing. How many times have I gone into circle and I have called on whatever deities want to come, and Bastet will come, or Anubis will come, create relationships with these animal gods, right? Or create, and that's the other thing too, I would really encourage young practitioners is learn about them, not just in books. Meditate. If you have an animal that consistently comes to you, get quiet, close your eyes, ask them to come to you and create a relationship with them, right? Why are you coming to me? How do you want to work with me? I always teach the 5 W's, right? Who, what, when, where, why. If you're going to practice magic with animals, it's not just the tangible, it's also the spiritual. Close your eyes, get to know your animal spirit, get to know the animals that want to work with you. And don't be afraid. And if you, let's say cat is one of the animals that want to work with you, and you have a black cat and there's a love spell that calls for a little bit of black cat hair, go to your cat and talk to them, have a conversation, go, listen, dude, you know what? This is something I'm working on. Are you okay with that? Ask permission, but don't be afraid to take 3 little hairs and work with them.
Very, very nice. Very, very cool. Angel Morrigan, everybody, presenter for WitchCon 2026. And you can check out her classes right there on witchcon.com. Make sure you check that out. Thank you so much for coming on the Lone Wolf Show and sharing your spirituality, your love for the animals, and your animistic witchcraft right here on www.witchcrafttv.online. We'll catch you at WitchCon. Blessed be and merry part, and may we meet again.
Merry meets and merry be and blessed be.